Okay, this will be an introduction for many, but I'm going to kind of present it to those who will be dealing in 3D modeling in any number of programs, and just show you how layering works in the sandbox tools and how you can essentially do a existing vertical profile, if you want to call it that, based on projecting or draping some line work down onto a tin, a digital elevation model, or what would be called here a grid in the sandbox. So I've got the sandbox tools up here in SketchUp, and I'm just going to draft basically a grid, which essentially, if you think about it, there's a grid there. Now that grid, if you notice there, that grid there is actually going straight up. So that, when you bring it in SketchUp, is one kind of combined object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to twist it back down on its side. I do that by, remember, grabbing the tool, holding the shift key when I get a direction, and then spinning that down to 90 degrees. And it turns out that these projections in SketchUp only work going straight down in the true coordinate system. And I want you to notice here that the top is light, the bottom is dark, and that becomes up later really important when you're using this to model physics. So you just have to remember that the light side is up. Alright, I'm not going to change the elevations of that, but later on you're going to see there's all kinds of things that you can do to kind of bring in a contour map and to make this more 3D. But I want to point out now how important layering is at this point, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the layers and I'm going to make 3 layers. And if you notice here, what I just made went on to draped info. So instead of it being on draped info, I'm going to get my current layer to be 0, and I'm going to leave this over on the side so we can see it. And I'm going to re-erase that out, because you're going to see very often, right? I had a couple of them around already, that things can get kind of nested. So whereas that tin might have been on layer draped info, something else might have been on a different layer. So now everything I make is going to be on layer 0. I'm going to make basically a grid there. These are the sandbox tools, and now in this case I don't even need to flip anything because it grabbed it on that ground plane. We're calling that a ground plane. That's a typical word that you see in most modeling. You'll see it in any set of programs, and you get this kind of, because of the pixelization, you get these really weird waves that come up from adding up from the way light and computers work. So this thing is flat. What I'm going to now do is I'm going to go ahead and draft up above it. I'm going to draft a line, and the way I'm going to go ahead and do that is this. I'm going to go ahead and draft this thing, take that one thing I just made and move it up above it. So I'm going to take a plane now, a face if you would. I'm going to move it upwards. I'll move it up so many feet. Right. Now again, all this was on layer 0. Now I'm going to put some drapeable info on there, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go to change my current layer to drapeable info, and I'm going to draft something. I guess I'll just draft a circle up here on that face. And in this program, you click on something, right click, entity info, just like an AutoCAD. This is drapeable info. The next step is key now. There's some incredibly important tools that you're going to see are going to have all kinds of uses, and those are the stamp and the drape and then the smooth. You're going to see later there's a smooth someplace in here. Might be here. Alright, so you got all these tools within here. If you want to drape this information, these lines down onto that tin, if you remember that tin or that grid is actually a block and is acting like a surface. What you do is this. If you want to just pull that information out later on a separate layer, you're going to need to change your current layer to draped info. Your current layer to draped info. Now when you go to, you select what you're going to drape, you say you're going to drape, and then you select the mesh. And you notice there it's projecting it down. Again, this mesh is flat. going to explode on me. Let's see whether it did it. So if I zoom in here now, you see that that is down on the plane. All right. All that said, very often, like in many things in a program, you're going to want to, this is still now acting on, it was draped onto that plane. So now if I go into here, if I explode that, it's going to take a while. It's a lot of edges going on. And this is a pretty large and tight grid. We'll see whether it explodes on me or not. What you're going to do is explode it, freeze, or turn off the other layer, and you will have just that information on the only layer of draped info. What you then essentially have is a existing horizontal alignment in 3D. And once again, there's a million ways to do this in a million different programs. What you're often doing in civil design is coming up with an existing DTM or set of them. There'll be maybe different ones for different layers under the ground. Coming up with a proposed horizontal alignment, sampling the horizontal alignment. In other words, for every point on the horizontal alignment, going down and projecting down to the existing digital terrain model and coming up with an elevation. So now you've got basically your northings and your easting from your proposed alignment, and you get the vertical or your elevation from the existing. And from there you go through the design process. This design process is no different by hand than it is in Civil 3D or any other program. All that said, this is not responding, and maybe it is now. It looks like it broke it up. So now if I go to here and I turned off that and that, you see what's left is this circle broken up into little tiny pieces, which now would be your information. You can eventually list that information, and this actually would then be your 3D existing information for your proposed alignment. And this, of course, is alignment in a circle. We'll see how this goes about, but we'll be doing this by hand. We'll be doing this in Civil 3D, but also in the program like this, because SketchUp or like programs, 3D VIA or Mudbox in AutoCAD, are often used as a conceptual designer to augment or make more efficient both the first start of the design process and the final step when you're doing a lot of visualization. So you really want to get very steeped in how this works, and I'll let you know that on the campus computers we've got we kept SketchUp 6 because of the ability to pull in AutoCAD. I would recommend on your home computers you grab SketchUp 7 because it's a lot faster, and then just go through the process when you're done with your models to convert your existing and proposed DTMs or TINs out into SketchUp and do this kind of really wild visualization. Not when I say wild, these really important visualization and animation that becomes the norm now in civil engineering. And I'll point you out to a couple of places where you'll see that. All right, so that was the sandbox tools, right, and layering within SketchUp. Thanks for listening.